Like the title says, the question that I want to put, and a debate that I think we should have, what is the entry point to developing racism in the debate between racism and empathy? So, like, for example, the classic definition that is out there is racism is basically a race that has power, imposes its power upon another race, and uses its power to suppress that lower race and uses it to control them and rule them and dominate the lesser race, right? That's kind of like a general definition which we've been operating on. So, quick question. What if you have a person who may in fact be of that dominant race, who is on whose family completely public assistance? Maybe he himself is homeless, totally and completely and utterly devoid of any form of power. Might have even just recently came out of prison, has no right to vote, no right to anything, totally, completely broke. But what he does find on the street is a gun. And he picks up the gun and he doesn't like a particular race, and he walks into a room full of that particular race and unloads the magazine into the room of the race because he hates the people of the race. That person has absolutely no power of any kind, but nevertheless is a racist. But granted, he is part of the majority, like a white guy, right? So, who is that person? Can a person who has no power be a racist? And is there like an early definition before getting to the level of power? Is there a step 0, a step 1/2 before getting to the step 1 of racism, which is the need to have power? Power to be able to impose it upon a person. True, the person with the gun who went into the room had the gun, and the gun, you could argue, is in itself the power that the racist had against the unarmed minority and unloads the gun into them. So yeah, there's power there. The racist has power. He has a gun. The people who are unarmed are powerless against him or have significantly less power than him. I put to you that the entry level to racism, the entry level argument, the universal argument for people to perhaps to listen to, is to ask a person to have less empathy for other people outside of a clique, outside of a party, outside of a race, outside of whatever. That you are part of a special class and only the empathy that you possess belongs to the class. And that people outside of the class, outside of the group, you do not have empathy towards. Or reduce your empathy, reduce your empathetic connection to the other. And that if I reduce my empathetic connection to the other, it increases my ability to be a racist, the justifications to be a racist. And I want to try to come through some points as to how that shows up, both historically and even to a degree personally. So let's just talk about this for a moment. If you do not have empathy for another, you do not acknowledge the person's existence. You do not acknowledge the person's position. You laugh at them and mock them ruthlessly, whatever, because to you they don't deserve your connection. So you can say bad things about them. You can say terrible things about them. You may not be a racist yet, but what you are slowly but surely doing is conditioning your brain, or the person who is telling you to reduce your empathy towards other human beings, is helping you go through the stages of what it would take to be able to judge, to have a vastly lower opinion, or even no opinion at all, or even hatred towards another group because you have no emotional attachment to that group. You can start judging yourself and the group because your humanity is directed towards your class, your group. So your empathy and your justifications and everything that you do is inside of the clique. You are not necessarily a racist at this point, but you enter that point because if the other person you do not have the emotional attachment to, you start being able to give justifications for hating that person. Your clique doesn't do well, it's because of them. They are getting things, you're not getting things, or your clique isn't getting things, but they are. And therefore, but you don't have that because you don't have empathy. Because your group is what you are supposed to care about. Because that's where your empathy, that's where empathy goes into. And as a result, it is easy to start believing or being told and completely agreeing that those people, those groups, that group over there, the group that you've been told to not have empathy, that you can do terrible things to. So I put to you again that the stages of empathy, that the stages of racism begin with a generalized statement that empathy itself is bad, or that empathy towards others is bad. That's the entry argument. And over time, from that entry point of an argument, you can start dehumanizing and destroying the humanity of the other person. All the way to the point of doing anything to them. Even though you do not have electoral power as an individual, or maybe even as a group, or the small group that you're a part of. Like, I know you guys are living in public housing, or whatever, no power of any kind, totally broke, homeless, no power of any kind. But you no longer have empathy for the other, and therefore you can kill them. You can do anything you want to them. You can do the racist stuff because it's okay, because as you slowly but surely lose your empathy for the other, it becomes easier and easier for you to do terrible things to those people. So I would put to you that in the debate of racism, and what is racism, is to place racism as a very simple position. Racism begins by you denying empathy towards humans. This doesn't mean that you can't have jokes. This doesn't mean that you can't have racial jokes that you laugh and, maybe afterwards you can feel bad that you're laughing at the expense of another race or group or clique or whatever because of your empathy, right? But it doesn't necessarily deny, but you just have to be able to recover your empathy after hearing those insults, after hearing those racist insults that comedy may have, or somebody says in comedy, and maybe even confronting them, and then the person just looks at you and says, no, I didn't mean this. And genuinely demonstrates to you that, no, I was really trying to be funny. And I didn't mean to be this way. And if I am, and if I hurt you, or if I hurt members of the group, I'm sorry. But I'm a comedian, and I'm trying to get people to laugh and lighten the mood and all of this stuff. And I said all white people deserve to be served up in Cracker Barrel because it's freaking crackers, and white people should, meat's kind of expensive, so let's put the white people on the plate. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. Or, quoting, a person like Eddie Murphy, kill the white man, but buy my record first, kind of thing. That's comedy. But it's okay for comedy to be racial. So long as the person who does the racist comedy understands that he may be asked afterward to explain that, no, I'm just being funny. I'm saying a really stupid thing because I'm trying to make people laugh. And you know what? People doing stupid shit is funny. And racist stereotypes are funny. Because we human beings have these racist stereotypes, and we are funny for having that. And maybe by laughing at it, we learn that we need to be differently. I mean, I like how that one guy put it. What was it? This one guy, I forgot his name. I think it was Hughley or whatever, that said, black people are always mocked at for being watermelon eaters. It's like, watermelon. Everyone fucking likes watermelon. Watermelon is tasty. Love it. And you said that black people eating watermelon is terrible? Is something to be laughed about? You're an idiot. So people laughing about that are laughing at the stupidity that literally everyone who's going to be laughing at that stupid racist joke eat watermelon themselves, and probably eat more watermelon than a lot of black people. But that is just a joke. And to understand that we can have that and laugh at it and make certain that the comedian who is creating the racist joke, for that comedian to just basically prove that, no, I'm not really a racist asshole. I know what I said is racist, but I'm just trying to make people laugh because humanity is kind of crazy sometimes, and racism is fucking crazy. And we're going to laugh about it. And thereby reduce it and be better people. So in conclusion, what we should be doing as people who want to reduce racism is say that there is an entry level to racism. And that entry level to racism is people telling you not to possess empathy. But we should have a level of empathy within ourselves to understand that empathy is stressful. It's work. Feeling for your fellow man is hard. Seeing that someone is suffering and groups over there are suffering unnecessarily. And maybe I can do something, or maybe you don't even know how. You just know that those are human beings who are suffering. And it sucks. And it sucks to feel empathy for them, and you don't know how to solve it. And maybe you try to solve it, but you screw up and you make it worse. But you're doing it because you have empathy. And so in that way, empathy is really hard. It's harder to have empathy than to not have empathy. To not have empathy is an easier life. And that's part of the problem, is that the moment you remove empathy, your life becomes easier because you no longer have to care about the suffering of your fellow man. Versus a person who has empathy is not racist, because, or less racist, because he or she will do things for other people. So again, I want to ask you, is reducing race, is the process, anyone asking people to reduce the level of empathy, people who are asking people to enter into racism? Or is it all about power? And then, of course, most importantly, how should we solve this problem? How should we educate the importance of empathy if empathy can be a solution to racism? How do we confront those who say reduce your level of empathy? How do we do this? How do we make being empathetic popular in a way that allows racist comedy to exist? That is the question. Please like, share, and subscribe. And please, let's have this discussion about how to make empathy popular and strong, as so that we can acknowledge the suffering of our fellow man and thereby reduce racism and confront those who would want to expand racism. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let's have the discussion.